Welcome to the Behemoth Hunting Guides for Dauntless. I'm your host, Guns. Today we're going to take a look at one of the first and also one of the hardest late game behemoths you're going to be hunting, the Nasher, or the Ragetail Nasher in the Maelstrom. Now, for those of you that aren't there yet, there is a difference between these creatures. There's actually a second and even a third tier in some cases. First off, you'll fight every creature singly, so there'll be the Nasher, then there'll be the Drask, and you'll have the Shriek, and the Scrave, and the Skarn. This is a lot of S's, I know. You'll also have the Nezaga, but then you'll also have the Maelstrom version of these creatures. The Maelstrom version of these creatures has heroic modifiers on them. They also tend to have more health, they tend to do more damage, and they tend to have additional moves in their moveset, making them more difficult. This is the Ragetail Nasher. Now normally it's just called a Nasher because it's a giant beaver, but the Ragetail Nasher is the heroic version. Today we're going to go over how you fight him inside the heroic Maelstrom. And if you're able to fight him inside the heroic Maelstrom, or you understand how you fight him in the heroic Maelstrom, you'll be able to easily fight a regular Nasher that you come across. So let's start by going over the Ragetail Nasher's moveset first. First of all, he does have his little slither dodge. He does this back and forth a lot. He does it about 4 times, and then he stops. Occasionally he'll do it just once, but if he does it multiple times, he usually does it 4 times, and then he stops. The easiest way to actually dodge this is to roll to the right, to the left, or actually to roll into him. But don't roll away from him as he's attacking. The reason being, it's a long distance move with the big hitbox, and it kind of tracks a little bit. He still has his back roll where he jumps up into the air and flops on his back, but this time it causes a AoE effect on the ground, a little tremor-like earthquake that will hit multiple times and usually track towards someone. It doesn't have a big distance. You can outrange this fairly easily by being about a full body length away from the Nasher in order to avoid it. He does not have this AoE earthquake-like ability as a regular Nasher. He only has this as a Ragetail Nasher. If you do get hit with this, you'll be applied Wound, and Wound will deal damage to yourself after a certain period of time if you're doing too many actions, or if you get hit again multiple times. The exact triggering point for Wound we're not 100% sure of at the moment because we've had it activate in multiple circumstances. We've had it activate when you use too much stamina. We've also had it activate when you get hit more than once, and it does a large amount of critical damage. His Tail Slam also has this earthquake effect to it now. Normally the Tail Slam is just the Tail Slam as is, but now it has this earthquake effect added to it as well. So again, you can outrange this simply by backing up away from it. You can also roll through this attack, but it can be difficult at times, considering you're having to match the synchronous of the Tail Slam dodge and then dodge again with the earthquake, and usually they're right on top of each other, so you can only tend to dodge one or the other, unless you're rolling away from him, that is. Lastly, we have his Double Tail Swipe. His Double Tail Swipe is essentially one big swing, but he spins around twice, and he usually spins away from the starting position of his tail. So where his tail is, he'll lift it up and then he'll spin, but he tends to spin forward towards the direction that his head is. So as long as you're behind him and dodge the initial swing of his tail, you're fine. But if you're in front of him, you're more than likely actually going to get hit on the back swing of his tail coming back around. And lastly, he still has his Stomping Move. Now, his Stomping Move on one of the one side or the other is pretty easy to dodge. You can actually dodge this simply by dodging across to the other leg. But the Stomping Move also has the earthquake effect, the wounding earthquake effect, as before. Now, a consistent way we found to dodge this is to, in fact, dodge across his body to the other leg. So if he's stomping on the right, dodge over to his left side. But when he enrages, he stomps multiple times. I believe it's 5 times. And each one of those times sends out an earthquake effect. When he's doing this, going into his rage, it's literally best to just get away, as far away as possible, and just let him stomp it out. So that's the basics of the Ragetail Nasher's moveset. Now, as far as tips for fighting him goes, the first thing that you want to do is cut off his tail. Once you cut off his tail, he'll have a limited moveset. His tail swings won't be as effective, or effective at all. He won't slap the ground anymore. He'll essentially just stomp and do his little slidey move where he dodges down at you. That's essentially all he'll do from there. He'll still do his back roll, but just those 3 moves are all you have left to worry about. So cutting off his tail does limit what moves he has by a lot, and makes the fight a lot easier. If you tend to be able to get to the point where you can cut his tail off, you more than likely have the fight. Once you do have his tail cut off, it's essentially just to get in, poke around a little bit, and get out game. You want to stay wary of the stomps, don't get wounded too much, and try to stay on his sides more than anything. If you're fighting him for progression, I recommend you bring bulwark potions, stamina potions, healing pylons, and of course your regular health potions. 1 hammer and 3 bladed weapons are your best way to go. So don't bring multiple hammers to this fight, and in fact, I would recommend not bringing any hammers to this fight as all, as you tend not to get a stagger on him very easily, especially during progression. You're better off bringing 4 bladed weapons total, but if somebody has to bring a hammer because it's their strongest weapon, then make sure your other 3 are at least bladed weapons. The axe is probably one of the better weapons for cutting his tail, as it cuts up and down in a vertical line, and you can get a very effective chopping motion going on with the axe combo, so it makes it easier to put continual damage into the tail right on point at all times. The chain blades are pretty good as well, however the chain blades are very ineffective in DPS at this point. They're one of the worst weapons in the game currently. The sword's not too bad either. The pike's a good overall weapon, especially for wounding him, but I actually only recommend you bring 1 pike minimum. The reason being is the pike has a lot of horizontal attacks, so you're more than likely going to end up hitting his legs and his tails a little bit, and not be focusing all of the damage just on his tail, unless you have some really good positioning right at his back. So that's all the tips and what weapons I recommend you use and what potions I recommend you bring for the fight specifically. If someone is using a weapon they don't feel drains a lot of stamina, or they manage their stamina particularly well, that person may want to bring ironhide pylons instead of stamina potions, as well as healing pylons. If everyone brings healing pylons and someone brings ironhide pylons, you have a chance where you can put an ironhide pylon down and basically go toe to toe with him for 10 to 15 seconds there, inside the ironhide pylon. So that's what I recommend in terms of beating him for progression, beating him for the first time. If you're attempting to farm him, one of the first things that I recommend you make with his resources that come from his body is his armor. His armor will help get rid of the wound that he applies to you. With the helmet, chest piece, and the pants, he will apply 0 wound to you anymore, which will save you a lot on the healing potions. So, I recommend the first thing you do with any of the supplies that you get from the Ragetail Gnasher is make his armor. The weapon can come later. The armor will help you in terms of long-term survivability. And that's going to do it for this Ragetail Gnasher Behemoth guide. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you'd like more Dauntless content on the way. You can also watch us live over at twitch.tv/GUNZGAMES. And of course, there are many ways you can support the channel. I'm Guns, I'll see you later, have a good one everybody, happy hunting, and GG.